All right, joining us now is Robert Popper, Director of Judicial Watch Election Integrity Project. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. I want to talk about the idea that there is election fraud or not going on. Is there election fraud being perpetrated in America?
Well, yes, but we don't know the extent.
That's
Unquestionably.
the key. That's the key. Well, and I saw this statistic. Was it Montgomery County, Maryland, last election that there was more voters than registered or than people over the age of 18 in the county?
Yeah, that's actually, a nationwide epidemic. What happens every 2 years is that a federal agency called the Election Assistance Commission issues a report based on surveys of county clerks, and those are the people who handle elections, and county registrars. There are about 3,000 counties in the United States. In the last report 2 years ago, 300 of these counties had more registered voters than citizens of voting age, that is, citizens over the age of 18. This time around, the most recent report came out a few weeks ago, there are 470 counties that have more registered voters than age-eligible citizens. Last time around, it was about 1 out of every 8 counties where we had actual data because we didn't have data for all 3,000 counties. This time around, it's 1 out of 5. So it's getting worse, and we've sent out letters, Judicial Watch has sent out letters, telling people that they have 90 days to clean up their rolls or that we will sue them. And
good for you.
Lawsuits have started. We sued Montgomery County, Maryland, a couple of weeks ago because we asked them for their voting-related information, and they're supposed to supply that under federal law to anyone who asks. And they didn't. They said that they could only give that to a registered Maryland voter. Well, we're a Washington, D.C. nonprofit, so we were just out of luck. But
is that the law that they
well, I don't know. It's not. It's
it
not
sounds
federal
sketchy
law.
to me. Okay.
That's state law, but there's something called the Supremacy Clause, which means that state law has to yield where federal law conflicts with it. And so that lawsuit is limited just to getting the information that we're entitled to. But, to the extent that we sent out letters to 11 states, actually now 12, including Alabama, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, North Carolina, Kentucky, and California was the most recent one. I can't rattle them all off. But we told them that you have, so many counties where there are more registered voters than citizens of voting age. You have 90 days to fix this. Otherwise, we're going to sue. And, this includes, by the way, some of the biggest counties in the country, the biggest. Los Angeles County includes San Diego County, San Francisco. So we're concerned where this happens. This should never happen. Except I can't say that. There's one circumstance where you might have more registered voters than voting age citizens. That's if you just conducted a massive cleanup effort. You might temporarily have more people on your rolls, included in your inactive list of people who can't vote, than you have total voting age citizens. But that isn't what happened in these counties.
Well, I could see a situation where you would have a bunch of people die over the course of a couple of years, but there's still a fail there because there's still a significantly smaller percentage of registered people that are normally registered than people over the age of 18. It's a big gap. So even if you had a bunch of people die off, they're not going to close that gap that quickly, I wouldn't think.
Well, no. And in fact, I think, in terms of deaths of voters, what you're talking about is not possible except for some sort of, national catastrophe on
like
the order of
something
we've never had before.
Like crazy.
Well, God bless America and knock wood. But, that being said, what can happen is just that the federal law requires that you wait 2 general federal elections before removing someone permanently. And you can have a bunch of people in the waiting period status, but that's not what happened. I mean, what we've seen happen, the incredible growth in the number of counties, 1.5 times, almost doubling, who have more registered voters than citizens of voting age is attributable just to the complete absence of any enforcement of this law. And you put your finger on it. Lists are always going bad, in small, constant ways. People are moving. People are dying. And so as a result, the voter list of today is already a little bit out of date a week from now. And states have to do something about it. They have to spend money to do it, and it takes effort, and it's not something they want to do. And if you have an administration like the Obama administration that simply doesn't enforce the federal law on this topic, and I can tell you they didn't, then states take advantage of that. So, in a way, it's a shame that private outfits like Judicial Watch have to sue to, institute the lawsuits the federal government should be instituting to fill that gap. But that's what we're doing.
How often do you see pushback when you ask when states are asked for voter registration data, like what Maryland did, saying no, basically? Is that a common occurrence?
No, it varies wildly. I mean, some states are completely willing to work with you, and they will go along with your request, and they want to provide you with the information. Some states, it's clerk by clerk. They leave it to their clerks to reply. In some states, it's just a big fat no. But I will tell you that there's this statute, the National Voter Registration Act, famously known as the Motor Voter Law, and it says that you have to make voting-related information and documents available to people who request it. And this dovetails or relates to something that's in the news, which is that Trump's Election Assistance Integrity Commission, it's really early in the morning. I don't know how you guys do this. The Election Integrity Commission asked for voter lists from, a bunch of states, most states, and people reacted as if this, were at the beginning of I don't know what, monitoring people, dictatorship, voter suppression, all sorts of nonsense was floated out there. Listen, we ask for voter lists all the time, and we get them. A lot of states sell them. I paid as much as $1,000 as Judicial Watch and as little as $50. No, strike that. There's North Carolina, I believe, posts their voter lists online.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and so these lists they're used by commercial entities. They're collected. They're traded. People mine them for data when they're marketing. There is nothing. These are not national secrets. The list of people who are registered to vote are public documents, and a lot of states include voter history, and that doesn't mean, of course, how they voted. That simply means the last election in which they voted. And some states have it down to the level of school board.
One of the issues that always comes up with when we cover all kinds of issues on this show, but one of the ones that is, to me, so fundamental, that is so obvious, and I cannot believe people object to, a photo ID when you vote. I don't get the objection. I don't know why that's considered so oppressive to people to have an ID.
I'll tell you what, it's not considered oppressive to people. I mean, in poll after poll, minority voters, voters of all races, voters of both parties, clear majorities favor voter ID. Nationally, the number runs 70 to 80%, and it has in poll after poll. So most people agree with you. And I don't see I understand what they're saying, but I don't think that it's a valid argument. And, we don't know the extent to which there's voter fraud. We know that it exists. I mean, every election there's some sort of anomaly. There's, 100 people in this state, it turns out, are non-citizens. 1,000 people in Virginia, it turned out, were improperly registered non-citizens. 50 people in Virginia in 2012 voted in another, met the following pattern. They were registered in Virginia. They subsequently registered in another state. Then they voted in Virginia. And that was just on a very narrow check. I mean, if you made a full check, what would you find? If you extended it to all 50 states, what would you find? We don't know. But, I don't think that the argument against it has validity, and you take some arguments against it, or some positions, and they're simply extreme. For example, Governor McAuliffe vetoed a bill that would have provided the photo ID that you supplied at the motor vehicle department on the poll book. Now, I ask you, what can possibly be wrong with that? How could that possibly be discriminatory? You went in and got a driver's license, and they took your picture. What's wrong with including that on the poll book?
Do you know what his argument was? Why it was so troubling? What did he say? Do you know?
It was not necessary.
Oh,
I mean, it was in a flurry of bills that were vetoed.
Well, and the reason I say that makes sense because one of the arguments from, Terry McAuliffe is very staunch liberal, and that's fine. It's his right to be. But he and others have often said, well, there hasn't been one case of voter fraud. I always hear there's not one case. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Go to the Republican National Lawyers Association website.
There's tons of proven ones.
Thousands of prosecutions. But, the prosecutions don't even reflect it because in any crime, prosecutions are a fraction of committed crimes. You've got investigations are a fraction of known crimes. Prosecutions are a fraction of investigated crimes, and convictions are a fraction of that. And what's more, we know from making inquiries to the states that a lot of states don't even track voter fraud. In other words, they don't keep track of arrests, convictions, prosecutions, investigations. And often that's because the penalty is so small. But in any case, how can you possibly say that we know what the situation is in those states? We don't. And the administration, the Obama administration, made it harder to find out, for example, the rate of non-citizen voting. Now, we know that there are studies out, of course, they're just because of their subject matter, they're hotly contested studies about the rate at which non-citizens vote. We know at Judicial Watch that we talk to a lot of ICE officials, and they say that they find voter registration cards. Or we don't know the extent of this. And, what I can't stand is when, for example, the Obama administration refused to share a federal database that would have helped identify, the SAVE database, that would have helped identify non-citizens in the United States. To do that, to make it hard, and then they finally agreed after being sued to share that database with some states, and they put so many conditions on it that it wasn't as usable as it usually is. But to take those sorts of measures to hide the data and then to say that there's no evidence, well, that's just not right.
Yeah, that seems pretty convenient. Robert Popper, Director of Judicial Watch Election Integrity Project. What I'm going to do is tweet out a link to your story about suing to get that information, all right?
Great.
Have a great day, Robert. Appreciate you joining us.
Bye.